Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of People and Tech, where we explore the intersection between leadership and technology through the sights of industry experts. And today we're in Manhattan, New York, and I am delighted and honored to be joined by Derek Ferguson, Chief Software Officer at Fitch Group. Derek, welcome, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much for having me.
So before we get started with your career path, I'd like to give our audience a bit of an insight on Fitch Group. So correct me if I'm wrong. So Fitch Group is essentially a global leader in financial information services. And it's known for its credit ratings, it's known for its research, and it's known for its data and analytics. And the company operates in over 30 countries, providing professionals with a variety of information that helps them make informative decisions in financial markets. Did I miss anything important, or is that?
That is a brilliant summary. That's always the trickiest part for me as a technologist is getting through that verbiage. Certainly Fitch Ratings is possibly the best known portion of the organization. We also have Fitch Solutions, which represents the research and the raw data sales and all that sort of stuff. It has different subsidiary organizations like BMI, which is our international macroeconomic data. Pieces like Sustainable Fitch, which does ESG ratings, so on and so forth.
Interesting. Okay, that's very informative. Thank you for that. And to get started, your career path, I believe you have quite a substantial career and experience both in finance and in technology. Can you maybe walk us through where you started and how it's taken you to where you are today?
I started with a computer science degree from DePaul University in Chicago. When I started, I was a music composition major, but then I switched sophomore year, late in sophomore year.
That's an interesting switch right there.
It was. I often tell this story. My mom was a programmer when I was a kid, and she got me a computer and taught me to program when I was just 10 years old. And it was always that sort of thing that I did in addition to software. But of course, when you're young, you want to do something. I want to be a rock star. But that was always sort of hanging around in the back there. And as I sort of got further into college, I happened to take a couple programming courses, and I was like, oh yeah, this is the stuff I've been doing all along. I love this. This is what I really want to pursue. So I graduated. I had the great good fortune when I graduated that I got a job with a company called Interaccess in Chicago. And Interaccess was one of the first companies in the world to do commercial DSL internet access, which is probably difficult for some listeners to remember, but back in the day, internet was via the phone and the crackly sounds and all that sort of stuff. That gave me a lot of opportunities to write and speak at conferences about how we deployed that technology, led to me becoming involved in sort of the first wave of mobile applications when it was very much in its infancy. And all that was very much on the Microsoft stack. So I did a little bit of time as a Microsoft consultant, a Microsoft partner organization consultant, I should say, to be precise. And one day I got a telephone call out of the blue from a recruiter who said, today's your lucky day. Bear Stearns wants to talk to you. And I had no idea. Who's Bear Stearns? And he clarified and went for the interview, and that sort of started. Although I was still living in Chicago, I was doing that weekly commute out to New York, working on Bear Stearns on Wall Street, which seemed really cool for the 3 years that it lasted. And then, of course, we were acquired by JP Morgan Chase in 2008. But I was with JP Morgan Chase for 11 years.
11 years.
11 years.
That's a substantial amount of time.
It was a substantial amount of time. I mean, it's a large company. I had different roles during that 11-year tenure, and I ended as head of engineering for JP Morgan Chase's commercial bank prior to coming to Fitch in November of 2018.
That is fantastic, a fantastic career path.
It really was.
And as your role as Chief Software Officer at Fitch Group, I can imagine you oversee a bunch of initiatives. How would you describe your role there? And maybe you can walk us through some of the key responsibilities that you oversee at the company.
So in our organization, Chief Software Officer is responsible for software engineering, quality assurance, UI, UX, data technology, and an organization I call software transformation, which is as exciting as it sounds. It's and the day-to-day responsibilities are making sure that all of the software that we build custom is built according to the highest standards of quality and reliability, done efficiently, basically producing world-class software on good timelines and at a good cost. Software transformation I flag up specifically because with everything that's coming in now with AI code generation and just all of the emerging best practices around that, I found it necessary to set up an organization that was just completely dedicated to focusing on and disseminating the use of those tools to see what are all the things that we can do to improve our software development practice with all of the new stuff that's available.
And I think that's a crucial point nowadays to stay ahead as well and to provide the best services for one's customers. And we talked now a bit about the management, and I think as a technical leader, you lead across multiple teams. How do you also foster a culture of innovation and a culture of collaboration within your teams?
I think something like collaboration starts from the modeling that's done at the top, right? It's like, I think I always tell my direct reports, just because I say something doesn't mean that it's true.
Right.
Very much not the case. I have a lot of ideas. They aren't all winners. I know that they're not all winners. Please be open about flagging up to me when you hear something that doesn't sound quite right. I think having that level of humbleness and just understanding and being willing to collaborate with others, when you model that for the folks who work for you, they model that for the folks who work for them, who model it for the folks who work for them, and so on and so forth. The leader always sets the tone in an organization, so I try to make sure that the tone that we have is collaborative. And I'm helped in that Fitch is a genuinely collaborative organization. There's this theory in business, and I can't remember who coined the term, but it's this idea that the entire organization sort of takes its cue from the culture of the business. So you might have a technology organization. At some level, the way that the business works is going to be the way that it's going to be imitated in the technology. In our case, the way that ratings are put together, for example, is very collaborative. They sit in committees. They all come up with thoughts about what a certain rating should be. And then they all sit as partners and they listen to and exchange ideas. And as I understand it, the most junior person on the committee has that voice to say, I think it should be this. So when you have that sort of modeled on the business side, it's natural that you'd have that same sort of collaborative atmosphere modeled on the technology side.
And that I think is a great approach, that everyone is also able to have a voice within the company and express their ideas and thoughts. And how do you balance out management and leadership? Because a lot of people sometimes confuse the both, management and leadership. And for our audience, management is a lot about creating processes, creating structure, making sure things get done in a timely manner, whereas leadership is a lot about guiding, as you just said, and creating that culture of collaboration. Are there times when you lean more into management and other times that call more for strong leadership?
It's an excellent question. I think the management piece, I tend to be a methodical individual, and just given my engineering background, structures and processes probably come pretty natural to me. So that's something I'm always just doing in the background. Leadership, the best leaders are the folks who really have a genuine, demonstrable interest in the outcome of whatever it is that they're chasing, I think. So like in my case, I mentioned about the AI code generation tools and the fact, I'm really sort of pushing those. I'm super interested in seeing what happens with them, you know.
I can see that you're very passionate about it as well. It's coming out.
It does, and there's you can't substitute that sort of natural enthusiasm to just say, and for as long as I can remember, I've always been somebody who's just always, I remember when I was a kid playing video games at home on
Yeah.
like the Atari 2600.
Yeah.
And people always say, you know what? We didn't realize how bad they were back then. I knew. I played them. I said, this could be a lot better.
Yeah.
So I've always been somebody who's wanted to see what's right around the corner.
Right.
And I think that for a technologist, for a technology leader, that's probably the number one best aspect of leadership is to have that sort of enthusiasm and curiosity and desire to see the future.
Yeah, that is wonderful. That really is a good wrap up. And I think it's funny how these experiences that we have growing up as kids, how they somehow stay with us and how they somehow come out in future aspects of our life. And we can really see the passion there.
It's true.
Yeah. So we've talked a bit about how you work with your teams and within the company. Could you maybe share some aspects of the things you work on and maybe some of the platforms that are quite important to Fitch and to Fitch's customers?
So internally, we use a lot of Java, a lot of Python, a lot of React. Now, we have other things in our environment, and I've always liked the idea that different tools for different tasks make sense. Yeah. I try not to constrain our squads because we use an agile methodology any more than is necessary. And if people have, hey, this tool can do the following for us, I try to make sure that we have some sort of way that they can bring that in and it can get a fair hearing and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But in general, it's Java, Python, React stack. That's sort of our basics. Large language models are becoming much more a part of the stuff that we do. Yeah. And it's the usual cast of characters that you would think in that case, like the OpenAI models, the Claude models, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. That's pretty much the list of techs.
No, that's really informative to hear. That's, I would say, on the internal side of the company. Moving forward to some of the customer-facing platforms that Fitch provides. Could you walk us through maybe some of the main ones, some of the ones that also fall under your management?
Absolutely. So we have a set of public-facing websites, fitchratings.com, for example, which publishes the ratings information that we are regulatorily mandated to provide to the general public. So that's our in front of the paywall presence. Right. And we have other marketing websites for other lines of business, but that's one side of stuff. We also have a set of paywalled websites where our subscribers can come in, they can access our deep research and deep sets of data that are behind that. Yeah. Now, one of the interesting trends that we see in the industry is for years, everybody wanted to consume research from a website or by downloading a PDF. Okay. All right. It's no secret that there has been a dramatic rise in the fortunes of raw data over the past several years. Data is the new oil, a lot of folks say. Yeah. Yeah. So we see a lot of our customers now interested in things like APIs, which we also offer, and data feeds, like files for consumption. So those are also offerings that we have. Yeah. Our website, we have like Fitch Ratings Pro and BMI are a couple of our paywalled websites. Sustainable Fitch also has a paywalled presence where our subscribers to that can come and get information about ESG scores and stuff like that. The APIs are very interesting to me because historically, folks have used APIs to come and get data when they already know what the data is that they're looking for. Yeah. What I'm really interested in with APIs now is how they might be built into asynchronous mechanisms so that a customer could potentially say, for the following rating, could you please inform me when it changes through an API interface? I think that's sort of an emerging standard, or I wouldn't even call it a standard necessarily. It's an interesting aspect that I think might come more into vogue in the industry going forward. Yeah. No, that sounds great. And I guess, with customers wanting more raw data, AI obviously plays a big role in that, which we'll get into. But from what I understand from your role, it really is the intersection between technology and business. How would you balance out
innovation and technical decisions with the strategic goals of the company and also the needs of your customers?
Well, I like to think that the needs of our company and the needs of our customers are fairly intertwined.
Yes.
So I would start from that as a premise. Where you usually see balancing acts like this is in areas of technical debt and in any given sprint, because once again, we follow agile methodology, what percentage of bandwidth is used on remediating security flaws or reliability issues or whatever, the raw technical work versus delivering new features for customers. One of my very first bosses, I remember, used to use the phrase "paint the plane while it's flying."
Paint the plane while it's flying.
Paint the plane while it's flying.
Learn by doing.
Yes. I think the sense in which he meant it was, if you know that there is an issue with some component,
right,
rather than looking for an opportunity to land the plane and work on it while it's on the ground, see if you can figure out some way in the course of the work that you need to do, since you're going to be building this feature enhancement and that feature enhancement is in this component, why not try to remediate the issues with that component while you build the feature request? Okay. That does tend to be a very successful way to get things done. I've seen cases where folks have tried it in a different way, to the extreme of saying, look, we have so much tech debt, let's bring in a bunch of contractors and have them deal with the tech debt, and then we'll have a clean ship. The problem with that always becomes, when you bring in a bunch of contractors to do that work, you wind up with a system that was built by folks that weren't, it's like a new system, and then somebody has to learn it and maintain it and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. I think you're much better off painting the plane while it's flying, right, and figuring out ways to work that routine maintenance into your feature requests and address stuff as it comes up.
Yeah, wow, that's a really interesting way of doing things, and it sounds very effective as well. Yeah. So we've talked a bit about some of the changes happening in the industry and with technology. And throughout your years at Fitch, how do you see that your approach to software development has adapted with some of these changes happening?
I think, in fact, I don't even say I think, I know that one of the pivotal changes for us has been our focus on the idea. So in software engineering, you're often told good, fast, cheap, pick two. You can't pick three. You can either be good and fast, or you can be good and cheap, or you can be cheap and fast. You can't be all three at once.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly. There was a book that came out several years ago called Accelerate. Dr. Nicole Forsgren's the main author on it, and there's a few other authors. It's a research work, and what they did, she was a researcher at Google, did a survey of over 10,000 different software engineering organizations, and asked them about their practices, the way in which they constructed software. How often did they ship software? How often did they have issues? How long did it take them to resolve the issues? All that sort of stuff. And what they found was that greatness in a software engineering organization can typically be attributed down to just 4 attributes, which have to do with how long it takes to get software out, how often it gets pushed, how often you have issues, and how long it takes you to resolve those issues. Okay. They're known in the industry as the DORA metrics.
The DORA metrics.
The DORA metrics. DevOps Readiness Assessment, because that's the survey that, it's the readiness assessment. How ready are you for DevOps? We've embraced that very fully, and we are really pushing. The idea being that, at the risk of oversimplifying a 200-page book, if you're fast, fast enables you to be good and cheap. Because I might build something and it might not be quite right. Okay. And I might put it out there. If it took me very little time to build it, and I have the ability to pull it back very quickly, no one ever even noticed it was out there, and make a change and then put it out there again quickly, as far as the customer is concerned, it's good, because what they see is good. I did it fast, and because I didn't spend a lot of time doing it, it was also cheap. Yeah. So thus the name Accelerate. So we track those DORA metrics very closely now. And they've really paid significant dividends for us in terms of our productivity and with the happiness of our workforce too. They really like being empowered. You hear about these organizations that do thousands of software releases a day. That's what this is.
Right.
It's putting the developer, the software engineer, the technician in the driver's seat and sort of letting them be the master of their own destiny to get their code out into production.
That is a fantastic approach. So you've found a way of actually getting all three.
That's what we try. Yes.
Great. And now looking towards the future, and I mean, the dawn of AI is upon us. What would you say are some of the upcoming technologies and trends which you think will not just shape the way Fitch does things, but also the financial industry as a whole?
It's really interesting to see what later generations of artificial intelligence will do with the data that they have access to. Not just the data that the models are trained on, but the data that they are asked to look at and work on. I was at a presentation the other day from Ethan Mullock, who's a professor at Pennsylvania, UPenn, I think it is.
Okay.
We'll have to
fact check
edit.
that.
We'll have to fact check this. What is it, Wharton? He's a professor at Wharton at UPenn, I think.
Yeah.
And he was pointing out that everyone's trying to get more scale into these models.
Okay.
Train on more data, using more power to get larger and larger models that can think better and better. One of the discoveries that they've had recently is you can scale that way to get a model that can just come up with better answers quicker. Or, as with human beings, you can give a model more time to think. So a model that is explicitly told, and I don't think you can do this like with ChatGPT, you actually have to get more into the underpinnings of this, but a model that's given the ability to think about a problem for 30 seconds versus a model that has to come up with an instantaneous answer. That model that thinks for 30 seconds comes up with a much better answer. It sort of debates it back and forth in its own mind, just like we do when we're trying to make a decision. That's opened up a whole new realm of ways in which large language models can reason and can accelerate and provide even more scale. I'm super interested in seeing where that goes. Because everyone thought up until this point that you need to spend more money and more processing power training larger models. This idea that now, well, actually, you know what, maybe you can just give these models more time to think about each problem when it's something that's important. I think that probably will scale beyond just the financial industry, even in terms of the impact it has. I think that's a industry-wide, civilization-wide change there.
I believe so as well. I mean, it regardless of what people are working on, regardless of what industry it is, I think it's going to highly impact everyone across the board. Now, Derek, you've had quite a significant and quite a remarkable career throughout the years. Looking back, if you were to reflect, what would you say are some of your proudest moments? And what would you say are some of the more difficult moments that you've had, or some of the mistakes that were made which have shaped the way you do things today? And this could be at Fitch, this could be at previous companies that you've worked at, kind of in general.
Boy, I'll start with, when you said what are some of like the not so great moments I've had, so many folks have a similar story, which is data migrations. Migrating from system X to system Y, it's got to be one of the toughest things out there. Just, because the vendors will always tell you, oh yeah, this system is super compatible with the other system. We have clients who make this move 100 times a day. And it's never that easy. I remember 3 years out of college, being in, I had the great good fortune, I mentioned InterAccess before. It's a very forward-thinking company, very young company. They gave me just my own office, even though I was only a few years out of college. So, but the sort of caveat on that was I vividly remember 3:00 in the morning with my sleeping bag in my office.
You just didn't leave the office. They basically gave you a new apartment.
That's exactly what it was. Very, very accurately observed. And that was a data migration.
Right.
And ever since then, I have just always said, whenever I go into a data migration, I'm never going to undersell the complexity of it, because those tend to be the gotchas.
Yeah.
Proudest moments. Certainly it's difficult for folks now, I think, to understand the significance of having fast internet, but it has, you wouldn't want to go back to the days of slow internet, believe me. That was, so being a part of that was certainly very cool. Having been responsible for what became the microservice exemplar application at JP Morgan Chase while I was there.
Yeah.
And even I remember while I was there doing stuff that was pretty cutting edge in the area of machine learning back then too.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of successes there. Since I've been at Fitch, I've had so many opportunities. The thing I mean, there's many things I love about Fitch, but the thing I always tell our new graduates is it hits a sweet spot between being small enough that we can act on things instantly when someone has a good idea, but it's not so small that we don't have the resources to make things happen.
Right.
We've always, we've got enough resources to do interesting things, but not so many resources that you've got to get 15 different people's approval to do things.
Yeah.
And so that at Fitch has led to things like we do an annual codeathon in London and New York and Chicago. In Chicago, we partner with a group called Breakthrough Tech.
Breakthrough Tech.
Which is an association of women and non-binary people in technology.
Yeah.
They staff the codeathon, and they build an application for a few days with Fitch mentors for use by an MPO in Chicago.
Yeah.
And then we've replicated that also in London and New York. Actually, part of the reason I'm here in New York now is tomorrow we've got our first ever New York codeathon.
Okay.
They're building an application for a local NPO who are doing sustainability efforts on Governor's Island, which I'm told is like a local eco community sort of thing. I'm a native Chicagoan myself, so I'm not sure.
I'm from London, so
So it's like
we'll have to ask the folks.
Yeah, we'll have to ask the folks about and that has provided a tremendous a degree of satisfaction. We also have a relationship I established with the University of Illinois system called City Scholars, where we bring students who are downstate at University of Illinois, which is like one of the top 5 schools of computer science in the country. Yeah. And we offer them internships during the school year where they can work part-time in Chicago while they finish their studies. Yeah. It's really good for Fitch because we get access to that sort of world-class talent. Yeah. It's good for the students because they get experience. Yeah. And it's good for Chicago because an interesting thing that has happened historically when you have these top-notch computer science students, even though they're only a few hours south of Chicago, disproportionately they've been going to California, right? The Silicon Valley and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So that opportunity to help the local community by retaining that talent and showing them, hey, wait, there's really interesting work to be done right here in Chicago is super.
Yeah, that is great. I mean, I can really align with that because a big reason why I'm creating this podcast as well is to share experiences and to share knowledge. And I feel like this is something that you and that Fitch is doing in collaborating with these organizations and creating all these opportunities, which I think is remarkable. It's great.
Thank you.
And as we approach to one of my last questions, or maybe my last question.
Okay.
Looking back, or even today, what would you say is the best piece of advice that you've received throughout your journey and which you carry on with you until today?
So anyone on my team who's watching this, and I'm hoping everyone on my team will be watching this, but they'll know what I'm going to say immediately. So this is the story of the 3 gardeners. I tell it ad nauseum, so they'll have to just tolerate and hear it again.
I didn't hear it yet, so I'm
right.
quite intrigued.
So this is a story I heard at the Winchester Mystery House. And I've heard it attributed elsewhere, but Winchester Mystery House is where I heard it. So Winchester Mystery House is a house in San Jose, California, that was built by the widow of the man who invented Winchester rifles. And the story is that she was distraught about the what his rifles had done in the world, and she felt she was cursed. So she hired workers to constantly work on her house. And you can go and you can visit this place, and it is a mansion that was just built without any plans, ongoing and ongoing and ongoing. So there are stairways that go up to the ceiling. There's just, because she never wanted them to stop, because she thought that the pounding of their instruments scared away the ghosts. So that's the interesting, but that's not actually the story. So what they said was that one day she wanted to hire a gardener, and she talked to 3 gardeners. And she asked the gardeners, what would you do if I asked you to do something in my garden that would be totally destructive to it? And the first gardener said, well, if you asked me to do that, I would absolutely refuse. I would tell you that was a terrible idea, and I would say no. Didn't hire him. She asked the second gardener. The second gardener said, well, you're the boss. No matter what you say, I'm going to do it. I would just do it immediately. She didn't hire him. Then there was the third gardener she spoke to, and the third gardener said, well, if you asked me to do that, I would explain to you very clearly what the repercussions of what you were asking for were going to be. And then once I was certain that you understood what was going to happen, I'd go ahead and do it. And that's the person she hired. So I always try to convey to my teams, we want to steer clear of being either of the first 2 gardeners when we're dealing with our customers. If our customers say something and we think, well, wait, that's going to cause a bunch of havoc, we don't just do it. And if they tell us to do something, we're like, well, that's a bad idea, we don't get obstreperous and say, no, we're not going to do that. Best to ask for clarification. And the best technologists are the folks who can present the business with a lot of options and alternative ways of doing things, and let them choose, oh yeah, you know what? Hey, you said that's not quite what I wanted, but this sounds like a really good possibility. Could we do this? That's the way that you really become a valued partner with your customers. So that was a piece of advice that was given to me that I think about every single day.
That is a fantastic piece of advice, and something that I'm also going to be taking with me, and I think a lot of our viewers will be able to learn from as well. Well, thank you, Derek. I think that brings us towards the end of this episode. And for everyone tuning in, don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. And as always, keep on exploring, keep on learning, and keep on sharing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was great.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.